Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today, and I'm bringing you another Dragon Ball discussion about Dragon Ball Super and the Tournament of Power. And as always, we're going to be talking about the Angels of Dragon Ball Super and one of the biggest theories that the franchise has ever had. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So, let's talk about something that really took the Dragon Ball community by storm. And if you guys remember, early in the Tournament of Power, when Universe 9 was erased, and the Grand Priest and Mojito had that wicked, sinister smile, the Dragon Ball community went nuts. Everybody, including, your grandma and your grandpa and your brothers and your sisters, we were all making theories about the evil angels of Dragon Ball Super. Fans were doing it, Dragon Ball YouTubers were doing it, it was being said on forums, it was being said on anime websites. Everybody was talking about the evil angels of Dragon Ball Super. And the thing that really amazes me, guys, is that a lot of people felt that Dragon Ball YouTubers were just milking that theory just to make a big buck. And a lot of people also thought fans were stretching out this theory and just making excuses to believe it. But going back and looking at how that theory was put into fruition, guys, I don't really think a lot of people expected this theory not to come true. First of all, it was very peculiar that the Grand Priest is kind of always running things throughout the Tournament of Power. He was always a very cryptic and mysterious character that we knew nothing about. He always kind of dominated the conversations with Zeno, who was more powerful than him, but somehow it always seemed like he was the real one that was pulling the strings behind the Tournament of Power and how the actual tournament was organized, as he himself said he organized it with the Zenos themselves. And when you look at the specific ruling of him wanting to keep his children, or the angels from the different universes, alive, while, still allowing the God of Destruction and the Supreme Kai and all of the fighters and all of the different innocent people in the universe to be erased, you gotta think to yourself, what would his incentive be that would allow all of those people to be erased on the spot without any care, and specifically wanting his kids to not get erased in the process? All of the writing was on the wall for the Grand Priest to be evil. And to be honest with you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in Toei and with Toriyama that they originally were planning on making the Grand Priest evil, but then they somehow changed the writing and they said, nah, we don't have time for this. We have too much characters to focus on. Let's change the direction of the narrative, because I think it was too strongly resembling something that would actually come to fruition in the beginning. And to talk about the Grand Priest specifically, guys, one question I've always wondered myself is, would the Grand Priest have actually made a good villain? And to tell you guys the honest truth, I'd say yes. I think the Grand Priest would have made a great villain if he was a great villain for multiple reasons. And Geekdom actually did a topic talking about this, where he was saying how, Goku and Jiren and all of the other Tournament of Power fighters could have joined up together to gang up on the Grand Priest. And I think at the time that theory made a lot of sense, because in the future Trunks Zamasu arc, we had a Supreme Kai or a Supreme Kai in training that kind of went rogue and caused a lot of problems with, obviously, the mortals or the Ningen of his respective universe and all the different universes. He conflicted with time travel, and he was essentially the most godlike villain we ever had, not counting Beerus, obviously. Looking at Zamasu and, looking at how godlike he was, and, having this divine villain with all of those different interesting godlike techniques with, the lightning and all that stuff, we kind of got something interesting with him there. And with the Grand Priest, we would now have like an angel villain, which would be very different, because the angels were always kind of looked at as these calm and collected guys that were servants to another power. So to see them being a villain would be an interesting concept, because it's like now the people who were serving the gods of destruction and Zeno are now the villains. It's kind of like they're rebelling against the guys that they were kind of serving before. It's kind of like a rebellion amongst themselves, which would have made it a very interesting concept. And when you look at how strong all of the angels are, with all of them being stronger than the god of destructions and training them, along with all of the other fighters, they possess the power to actually have been a threat. And with all of the Tournament of Power fighters, if there was like this angel rebellion where you have like the evil angels versus all of the 80 Tournament of Power fighters, I think that would have made it great for the Grand Priest to be a villain. I think it would have also have made it great for all of the angels to be villains too. And think about it from the perspective of Whis and Vados. So Whis and Vados have often been referred to as these common collected angels, as I said before. They've often been guides to the Dragon Ball characters that we know, and they've never really shown any signs of being devious in any way. I mean, Vados did have that one moment in, like, I believe it was 2016 where, you know, Champa was destroying a planet and she had that sinister smile, and then 10 million people made a theory about, you know, Vados having a smile and saying a hidden evil and all that stuff. And, you know, I remember that, and I also remember how she was kind of like bribing Hit to get into the Tournament of Power. So there was some questions about how good Vados was as a character, but other than that, that was quickly thrown away, and I think it would have added a lot of tension to show good angels now becoming villains to characters that they were very familiar with before. But the next thing we have to talk about here, guys, is we gotta talk about the actual angel reactions from the Tournament of Power and what actually led into this theory being as big as it was. So obviously the peak popularity of the evil angel theory would have to be when Universe 9 and Universe 10 were erased. When Mojito smiled following the Grand Priest being smiled, that led into a lot of people believing that this had validity, because why would you be happy with your universe being erased? But the real reason to this, months later as we're rediscovering this conversation, was the fact that Mojito felt that Rao, the Supreme Kai, and his universe as a whole were very incompetent, so he kind of felt like you're throwing away garbage in the universe and they don't deserve to be alive because they're trash, essentially. You know, let's throw away what's bringing down the quality of the multiverse. And that's kind of how I viewed Mojito's response after relooking at that situation. And then a lot of people also started thinking, does Cuss's reaction signify that, you know, obviously the angels are actually evil? Because when Cuss reacted to all of her friends being erased, she had a very different reaction and being very sad and depressed and morbid about her fellow comrades being wiped out in the Tournament of Power. So when that happened, it's like, does Cuss know something that we don't know that suggests that there's a deeper meaning to what's actually going on in the Tournament of Power? And a lot of people were saying, does Cuss tell us something? But then as the Tournament of Power progressed, guys, other than Vados showing a lot of emotion for Champa being erased, there wasn't really any other angel reaction that really came to eye. All of them were very neutral in the fact that, well, they lost, we gotta continue, and I'm just grateful to be alive. You know, that's kind of the vibe I got from all of the angels following, you know, Cuss and Mojito, and, you know, Vados was mixed in there. And the funny thing about all of this, guys, is that it really became apparent as the Tournament of Power progressed that it was either a narrative change or it was just something that fans overthought about, you know, from the very beginning. And to tell you guys the honest truth, I honestly don't think that fans were overthinking this, because all of the things that Super was putting together really showed a direction of the angels being evil in all of this. And if there was one more thing I think we should close this video off with, guys, is we gotta talk about the future of Dragon Ball Super and what we could have gotten out of this. So if this theory were to ever come into fruition, if it were ever to come into life, this would have to be in a new Dragon Ball series. And honestly, it would be great because the Grand Priest is the next level of power that would possess a threat that you can go up on the hierarchy of, wait, these guys are actually stronger than the last guys we actually faced, because Dragon Ball always has to create stronger opponents. And I do think that's the only way this evil angel theory would have come into life. And honestly, guys, I'm kind of bummed out that it actually didn't come into life, because I would have liked to have learned more about how the angel hierarchy works, how angels are assigned to their universes, how they meet their gods of destruction. I feel like a lot of lost material is being lost with this theory not coming to life. And honestly, seeing the Tournament of Power fighters teaming up to fight against these angels would have been a much deeper and plot-filled Dragon Ball storyline, as opposed to just having a big tournament that Dragon Ball has had 10 million times. So essentially, guys, that's all I have to say to say, let me know what you think about the evil angel theory being put to the end, and this theory essentially being killed for a lot of Dragon Ball fans who believed this for a long time. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.